Do you know that in your body right now, you have trillions of bacteria? These microorganisms outnumber your cells 10 to 1. Crazy, right? Most of these microorganisms are extremely important for your health. Some of them make you sick, though. These are called pathogens. So then, how do pathogens infect you in the first place?
Hi. Before we jump into the lesson, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Julia, and I'm a junior at Arizona State University, studying biochemistry and global health. A fun fact about me is that over the past 9 days, I've run 3 half marathons. So I hope that you guys have been finding something to distract yourself, to do some fun things while we're all self-isolating right now. I love science so much because I feel like there is always something that you can dive deeper into, that you can research, that you can find out for yourself. And it's a really curious and empowering process. And I hope that you all fall in love with science as much as I have. Before we begin, I just wanted to say a little bit about who this lesson is intended for. The experiment is perfect for 5th graders, but it can also be adapted to be appropriate for all middle schoolers. The video will generally cover microorganisms and the scientific method by growing mold on bread. And the experiment will take approximately 10 to 20 minutes to set up, with about a week of observations after that. So leave yourself a little bit of time to do the experiment. Make sure that you get a parent or a guardian's approval before you start. And with that, let's get into the experiment and the lesson.
There are 3 main types of pathogens that we will talk about today: bacteria, viruses, and fungi. All 3 are microscopic, meaning that they are extremely small and that we can't see them with the naked eye. While bacteria and fungi are living organisms, viruses are not technically alive. However, they contain all the genetic material needed to infect a host cell in your body to make copies and cause an infection. All 3 of these microorganisms have many different types. Some are good and can be beneficial to you. Some, though, are bad and can cause you to feel sick. These are pathogens. The current coronavirus pandemic made me wonder, what causes pathogens to spread? One way we can answer this question is by using the scientific method. The scientific method is a set of steps that all scientists, including you, use to do research. It helps us to focus observations into testable experiments. The first step is making an observation. In this case, I was intrigued by the current pandemic and wanted to know more about how pathogens spread. I combined this with my observation that mold, a fungal pathogen, grows on bread in specific conditions. I wanted to know more, so I posed a question: what causes mold to grow on bread? This may help me to determine why pathogens spread. I now have to create a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a proposed explanation to answer our question. Pause this video and take a few minutes to try to come up with a hypothesis to explain what causes mold to grow on bread. Think about different conditions and variables you can test. Perhaps temperature has an impact on fungal growth. Maybe light does. Let your brain run wild. What do you think causes mold to grow? All right, now it's time for our experiment. Once we have a testable hypothesis, we go on to the testing phase. We collect data, which you can record on the worksheet posted in the description box. We analyze the data by calculating the area of bread covered by mold. And finally, we make conclusions about whether or not our hypothesis is supported or rejected by our data. A final important step is to share your results so that others can build upon your work and you can verify the results of your classmates and other scientists. For this experiment, you will need a slice of bread, a pair of scissors, a glass of water, a marker, and 4 Ziploc bags. Make sure your parent or guardian is okay with you doing the experiment before you begin. Make sure you never open the moldy bread bag after you've started the experiment. Additionally, immediately throw away the bags after you've completed your observations. To begin the experiment, cut your bread into 4 squares. One of these squares will be your control. So cut a square, label it, and place it directly in the bag. Now, you get to decide what your variable is, depending on your hypothesis. My hypothesis is that if a slice of bread touches surfaces that I touch multiple times a day, then more mold will grow, because I have introduced a lot of germs to the bread. My variable, then, is exposure to different surfaces. For squares 2, 3, and 4, I will rub the surface of the bread on the kitchen faucet, on the cutting board, and on my phone. These are the conditions that I'm testing for my variable. I will then label each of my bags and sprinkle a bit of water into each bag. Seal the bags and make sure you put them somewhere you can check every day to record your observations before you make your conclusions after about a week of observations. Remember, don't open the bags. Don't forget to download the worksheet in the description box so you can record your results and compare with friends. Great work so far. Now let's consider how this relates to real life. I can think of something, can you? That's right, the coronavirus pandemic. A pandemic is a disease that occurs all around the world. Getting the results from our experiment will help us to be informed on how pathogens like the coronavirus spread. I have some general tips for you to try to stop the spread of a pathogen. First, wash your hands. It's so simple and yet extremely effective. Pause the video here to watch the video in the description box of how to effectively wash your hands. Another thing you can do is limit the contact you have with people who are sick. And finally, listen to the experts. They have lots of experience with how to stop the spread of harmful diseases. Maybe you'll be one of these experts one day.
I hope you enjoyed the experiment and that you produce quality results. Don't worry, all results are good results because you will have learned something from the variables you selected. Now let's review some key questions about the experiment. In the description box below, you will find the worksheet that I asked you to use to record all of your observations. Fill out the analysis questions on there, and then return to the video and we'll discuss a few. Now that you've thought about these questions for a little bit, I'm now going to explain some of the science behind the experiment. One of your questions asks why you added water to the bags with the bread in them. To answer this question, let's go back to the basics. The fuzz that grew on your bread is mold. Mold is a type of fungus, as we mentioned at the beginning of the lecture. So, fungus is a type of microorganism. Mold grows from mold spores in the air, just like how plants grow from seeds. Unlike plants, though, molds can't produce their own food, so they must have a source of nutrition. Where do you think that this comes from? That's right, from the bread and the water that we added. So those are key ingredients that are essential in order for the mold to grow. Finally, let's consider the effects of different types of bread that you may have used. Some breads, like white bread that you may have bought from the supermarket, are likely to have preservatives in them. Preservatives are added to food to slow or stop the growth of microorganisms such as bacteria, viruses, or fungi. As such, they're called antimicrobial preservatives. If you've used store-bought bread in this experiment, it likely took longer for your mold to grow. On the other hand, if you used organic or homemade bread like I did, mold probably grew pretty quickly because you didn't have any preservatives in the recipe. These foods, without preservatives, are just meant to be eaten a lot faster. Okay, this seems like mold isn't a very good thing then, right? But remember how at the beginning of the video we said that microorganisms can be both good and bad? Yeah, mold is a type of fungi, which is a microorganism, so it has both good and bad qualities. The bad quality is what we've seen in this experiment, that mold grows on food and it spoils it much quicker. But in nature, mold can cause rotting, which is a process that returns nutrients to the soil in order to recycle those nutrients to be used by other organisms. It's pretty neat, isn't it? So let's look a little bit at my results. So first, before we do anything, let's look at the control. So this is the control right here. As you can see, there's not a lot of mold. There's like one major spot, but that's about it. I thought that the phone would probably have the most mold growth on it because from what I've heard, phones can get really gross because they have so much bacteria on them and we don't clean them very often. And this experiment is a reminder to me to do that. So the bread that grew the most mold was in fact the phone. This is what it looks like. It has a lot of mold growth on it, as you can see on both sides. So again, another reminder that in order to stop the spread of microorganisms and bacteria and mold, I should probably clean the phone a lot more frequently. Well, that's about it for me. I am more than happy to answer questions if you have them. Drop them in the comment box. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you learned something about microorganism growth, about epidemiology, public health, and I hope that you all continue with science in the future. With that, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.